Yeah, see, this is part of our consciousness expansion, part of our awakening. And this is the reason why when we get visited by an ET, often they will say, it's time for you to wake up.
Revolution Radio proudly presents, live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to a very special broadcast of the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at revolution.radio. As well, we are simulcasting live on my Facebook page at facebook.com/Bernard Alex Alvarez. I've got a fantastic guest for you today. This is someone who was on my show years and years ago. God, when the show was just really getting popular. And I've been wanting her to come back on just 5-6 years now. I don't know how long it's been since she was on. But a quick story. She was so kind many years ago to get up so early for me. She's joining me live from New Zealand. And last time, she was so nice. She got up at like 2 o'clock in the morning to join us. And it has been one of the most popular shows that I've had. But before we get that started, I wanted to talk a little bit about why this is such an important show. And it's not just because I really enjoy and love my guest and the work she does, but for me as someone who is, riding this wave of cosmic love and energy and downloads and whatnot. And I'm sure if you're a regular fan of mine, you've been noticing I've been saying I'm feeling a change, And yeah, there are lots of big changes going on in my life, and there have been huge upheavals, and I don't mean bad upheavals. Yeah, last December, that was crazy. I don't know if you all remember December. That was horrible upheavals. But as of this year, there's been big upheavals, but they're positive. And the funny thing is that, and I'm wondering if our guest will talk about this later on in the show after I introduce her, is that it's reminding me of my connection to my guides, to my the emissaries of light, and they're kind of like pushing me and pulling me and yanking me and yelling at me and telling me stop being stressed out. I try to fall into that routine of, oh no, this is such an upheaval, this is so bad, but meanwhile my higher self, my guides, my Arcturian emissaries of light that speak to me are like, we're doing this for a reason, we're preparing you, stop trying to freak out. And then I can't freak out. So I don't know if anybody else is going through the same thing. But so we're going to talk more about that, hopefully, with my guest. So let me tell you a little bit about today's show. And actually, this is exactly what I was just talking about. If you ever wonder what may be behind the events happening today, it is important to see where we began and how ancient events are controlling Earth and inhibiting our natural evolution even today. History repeats itself unless we gain new understanding, and there couldn't be a more auspicious time for extraterrestrials' presence on Earth, Judy Carroll's new book, because it explains the behind-the-scenes strings attached to modern-day situations. Now that I've let the cat out of the bag, it is Judy Carroll who is joining us. She is the author of Human by Day, Zeta by Night. She is the co-author of the Zeta Message, which is back when she was on the show here with us several years ago. Judy previously introduced her lifelong connections to the benevolent Zeta Greys, and I know there's a lot of controversy about that. I'm sure we'll talk about that. In this new book, Judy reveals that she is a blended soul whose conscious awareness spans two planetary connections. It is to be an interplanetary ambassador, and with other blended souls now incarnated as Earth humans, to be an interplanetary ambassador, to introduce more clarity, deeper understanding of what has happened in the past, offer understanding of present time global events, and provide guidance on how to heal our future as a planetary civilization. So, without further ado, it is my honor to welcome back Judy Carroll to the Just Bernard Show. Hello, Judy. Welcome back. How are you today?
Hi, Bernard. I'm very well, thank you. And it's a very good hour for me to be speaking here. 8 o'clock in the morning, so I'm awake. I've had my cup of coffee and I'm all ready.
Oh, great. Yeah, I figured you really appreciate it this time. Geez, our time difference is what, 10-hour difference. So, yeah, you're 10 hours ahead of us, right?
I'm actually in Australia, so I think I'm further ahead. It's
Oh,
8
okay.
o'clock in the morning here, 8 o'clock Thursday
Oh,
morning
so it's
here.
more than 10 hours.
I think it's at least 14.
So you're on Thursday, we're on Wednesday. Okay. I
Yeah,
could never
yeah.
figure that out, but it's always fun to try to figure it out.
Oh,
Any
look, we're living in the future here.
Yeah, you are literally in the future, Judy. Definitely. So it's so great to hear your voice again. It's so great, and I'm so very happy that you're able to come back on the show. It's like I've been meaning to have you come back on the show for the last several years, but I'm afraid to make you get up early in the morning again. So,
Well, Bernard, as always, the timing's perfect because the book's only just been released, my latest book, Extraterrestrial Presence on Earth. So, I mean, what timing could be better than now?
yes, exactly. Fantastic. So, Judy, let's, for those of my new audience members and followers that may not know or remember your last visit here with us, why don't we recap a little bit about how you got involved? Well, actually, let's start off with your first contact moment. When were you introduced to the Zetas? When did they finally say hello to you?
Well, I was actually having contact throughout my childhood, but because of a prearranged plan, I decided not to have a lot of conscious memory of it. So I was aware that I was living a sort of a double life. I remember being taken up our street by a tall, thin lady who I thought of as my grandmother, but it wasn't my grandmother because I asked her about it the next day and she totally denied it. And I was taken to a train station that I believe was up the end of our street. And it was many, many years before I realised there was no train station there. Our street was a dead end, a cul-de-sac. And when I did finally come to more conscious understanding years later, I realised that I'd actually been taken onto a ship. Um, the reason why I blocked my conscious awareness back then was part of my mission in this present life is to be an ambassador between the Greys and the Earth humans. This is why I made a pre-birth choice to have a blended soul or like a dual soul type consciousness so I can remember and connect with both cultures. So the plan that I made was to completely forget consciously what it is to be a grey, and so experience contact with ETs totally from the Earth human perspective, so that I would have empathy with those who are suffering fear, because I know a lot of people are very fearful of the contact, and I needed to experience this myself personally so that I would be able to understand. And then when full conscious awareness came at age 30 and I started getting into this work, I found that I could help people a lot more by understanding where they're coming from. Does that make sense?
Yes, I can relate to it actually. Thank you.
So, yes, my first 15 years, I really didn't remember very much at all. At age 15, I had a very classic type contact experience with the body paralysis. I remember waking in the middle of the night, completely paralyzed, but unable to move my body, but completely aware. I have heard it described as body asleep, mind awake, and that's a very, very good description of it. And there was missing time during that experience, but my life started changing very drastically after it. I began realising that, yes, I was in contact with somebody upstairs or something, In those days, I was a very, very good Catholic. I'd been convent educated, so I knew nothing about extraterrestrials. Things like that just were completely unknown here in Australia because we didn't have any events like Roswell to fall back on.
Oh, yeah.
So there was nothing known about extraterrestrials or anything like that. So I used to think of the ones who were visiting me as being of the Davic kingdom. And in actual fact, many, many years later, I came to realise that, yes, the Greys are closely connected with the nature spirit kingdom in that they're extraterrestrial, but they're also interdimensional. So in a way, I was picking up on a very deep truth back then, not having read anything at all on it. So to me, that was good validation. As I say, my life then began to really change. I was very, very aware of having help from these friends, who my invisible friends. I got married. We moved out of town, and we were living on acreage right outside the city. And at age 30, back in 1983, one afternoon when my husband's family were visiting, I began feeling like I was coming down with the flu. And I excused myself and went upstairs to a quiet bedroom at the back of the house and lay down. And almost immediately, the paralysis came on again and a loud, roaring, buzzing sound in my head. And of course, like any normal human being, I was absolutely terrified, lying there wondering what the heck was going on. I felt like my head was going to explode. And the next moment, I became aware of three of what I now know are Greys standing beside the bed. I just knew that they were my upstairs family. I immediately recognised them, and all traces of fear left me. Anyway, we had a long, long conversation that afternoon, and they basically reminded me of what I'm here to do, my mission. And I was told that I'd hidden myself away in the country for long enough. I needed to get back into the city, and I needed to undergo certain studies to be able to carry out my mission. These studies were, I was told I needed to learn to meditate so they could communicate with me. And I had actually been a professional dancer that was my work. And so I would have found meditation very, very hard to get into. I tried several times with no success. And so I was told to take up Tai Chi, as that would be a bridge between meditation and the physical dancing work that I was doing. Anyway, again, back then, here in Australia, no one had heard of anything like Tai Chi, so I didn't even know what it was. So I made a few inquiries, and it turned out that another name for Tai Chi is moving meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've realised since that was one of the best pieces of advice that anyone has ever given me, and I am eternally grateful to the Greys for having told me to do that. I was also told that I would need to learn to do natural healing, and I was told that I would need to do several years studying these things and that I would be moving back to the city to enable me to do this. So over the next 3 years, circumstances changed dramatically, strange coincidences happened as they do, and everything just fell into place to enable all of this to happen. And many years of study followed, including 8 years of training in a meditation development group, where I learned channeling and automatic writing, and 6 years of Reiki training to master teacher level and beyond. I'm also a qualified Tai Chi and Qigong instructor, and I've been teaching this for over 30 years now. So quite a lot has happened over that time.
I would say, my goodness, it seems like you had it a little bit easier than I did. They put me through the ringer first, but yeah.
Well, I have had a few interesting experiences along the way as well. I actually, in 1995, I actually had a fairly unnerving one. It occurred 3 weeks after I'd visited a sacred site in the UK. And this one involved a long needle with a blue crystal on the end being inserted into my brow chakra point. And I was held down on the ground by a group of Greys as they did this, and the pain was excruciating. So, of course, I was yelling, pull it out, which they did. But what I didn't realise at the time, but I do now, it was in a way an acupuncture technique, and a major download of information was given to me, along with a suggestion to start writing books on ET Earth-human contact, but from the ET perspective. And I was told to include plenty of information and explanations to overcome the communication barrier, which people had been complaining about, that the Greys wouldn't communicate. There was so much information to convey that one book became two, so the Zeta Message and Human by Day, Zeta by Night were produced over the next few years. My third book that's just been released, Extraterrestrial Presence on Earth, Lessons in History, was actually requested in November of 2011 during a meeting on board one of our ships. This meeting was convened to discuss the current situation on Earth and a planetary hijacking that occurred many millennia ago that's effectively cut Earth-plane humanity off from the evolutionary flow of the rest of the universe. So somebody upstairs suggested that I write a book on what has happened down here in the past to cause this present situation and what can be done about it. So to sum up, this is my life story and why I'm here. As time's passed, I've been able to access clearer recall on a conscious level of my work as a Grey on board our ships. So really, I've come to understand that up there I'm no different from how I am down here, except my conscious awareness is way more expanded. I consider myself to be a kind and caring person. I can't stand cruelty. I hate to see a person or animal hurt or frightened, and I wouldn't dream of deliberately harming or scaring anyone, either down here or up on the ship. So as a Grey, I'm exactly the same person as I am as an Earth human.
Wow, and what a fascinating story, and thank you for catching us up. Actually, I think I vaguely remember you talking about how you were going to work on this third book, and we never got to follow up on it. But with that being said, let me jump right in and ask you, because there is so much confusion, and I'm seeing some of the comments. People are like, "Ooh, scary," and there's been so much talk about like the Zetas being the bad guys and whatnot. And I know we covered this a little bit the last time, but that was a long time ago. Can you explain what is all the confusion? Is this a propaganda thing, or are there, just malevolent and benevolent?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. There is a massive propaganda campaign going on down here I talk about this very, very deeply in my new book, by a group I refer to as the Reptarian Controllers. They're the Illuminati, the Cabal. There's a number of different names for them. And the last thing they want is for the Greys to come here, because the Greys and other ETs are coming here now. They've come up since the bombs were let off at the end of the Second World War, and which had a huge impact off planet. And once a planetary just starts letting off weapons of that mass destruction, which impacts off the planet, has to be done about it. This was why he started visiting more and more during the end of the Second World War and after, and their visitation has really stepped up massively since nuclear weaponry has been developed on Earth. Now, the ones who are down here in control, running the planet, the shadow government, I think is another name for them, they, of course, don't want this interference by benevolent ETs, because they want to keep control of the planet. They don't want humanity to be free, to be able to evolve further. So they started this massive campaign that began right after World War II, after the Roswell event, to blacken the genuine ETs as much as they can in people's eyes. And what they ended up doing, they back-engineered technology and genetic material from the bodies of victims of those crashes. There were many crashes, not just Roswell. And they've actually started their own hybrid program down here. And they're creating hybrids using genetics from the Greys plus their own reptilian genetics. And they've created these sort of bio-robot things that are implanted and totally controlled. And these are the ones who are used in the MyLab abductions, which come from this group down here. Military abductions is what my lab stands for. And yes, they are nasty robotic little things, and they look a little like the Greys. And so this has caused a huge amount of confusion, because many of the people who are targeted for these MyLabs, military abductions, are also genuine contactees. And so they'll have a contact with the genuine Greys, which is really lovely and uplifting, and then they'll be subjected to a fake one, which is really horrible. And the poor person gets into such a confused, fearful state, they have no idea what's happening. And a lot of remote mind control is used to assist this program as well, so there's a lot of confusion going on.
Yeah, there is, and I think that, well, I feel that's a part of the, well, and I hate to use the word conspiracy, but that's what I call the greatest conspiracy of mankind, is the suppression of human consciousness and understanding of the bigger picture and why we're here and what's going on.
Exactly. And so much of this knowledge has been taken away from humans. A very, very good example that I always like to talk about is the removal of the teachings on reincarnation from the church in about, 550 AD by Emperors Constantine and Justinian, who basically hijacked the whole teachings of Jesus and turned them around. Reincarnation is such an important thing for people to understand, because that's how we evolve. The evolution in the human kingdom is a mind consciousness thing. It's not so much physical. It's an expansion of conscious awareness. And this happens over the span of many, many lives. The Greys actually gave me, or us, Helene, my co-author, and I, a teaching on what they call the human ladder many years ago, which is included in our book, The Zeta Message. And it talks about a cycle of evolution through the universe made up of 10 levels. They refer to these as galactic levels, but they're not actually physical places as such. They're levels of conscious awareness. And evolution in the human kingdom is working up through these many, many levels with many lives on each level to expand conscious awareness to a point where we become like people think of as angels down here. So basically 100% conscious awareness. We're limited to 10% down here on Earth, because Earth's on level 1. So this taking the understanding of reincarnation out of Scripture has blocked people from this understanding, and it's been replaced with frightening images of a judgmental God figure and hellfire and eternal damnation and all, which is just absolute total rubbish. No one is ever condemned eternally. There's just no such thing.
Oh, you can say that again. The rubbishness of it. It drives me nuts how people can believe all of this nonsense, and it saddens me, because humanity is so much more than that, and we're like you said, we're stuck on like a base level consciousness, or we've been reduced to, I should say, because I'm sure we were at a much higher level of awareness and consciousness at one time prior to a lot of the blocking of information.
Yes, the interference
of information.
Yeah. Well, human DNA was interfered with, way back. And this is part of the reason why people are taken up onto the ships in genuine contact experiences to have the DNA repaired, because the DNA is intrinsically linked to the amount of conscious awareness that we have. So we only have I think it's about 10% or maybe less of our DNA active, and the rest is referred to as junk, which is just not true at all. And this is why our conscious awareness is limited to 10%. It's all linked in together.
And I'm glad you clarified that, because many people believe that, we're told, we only use 10% of our brain, and that's not really true. We use all of our brain. We just, like you said, it's 10% of our conscious awareness is really the more correct way of interpreting that so-called statistic.
That's exactly right. The brain is a physical organ, but the mind is of a much higher frequency. It's all to do with energy. The whole universe or the multiverse is just layers of energy, different energy bands. And yes, we are multidimensional beings ourselves because we have a physical body and we have like an astral emotional body, spiritual body. We have the soul. And yeah, that's the thing. The mind is far greater than a physical body. Hence, all these NDEs, I think they call near-death experiences
Yes.
and out-of-body experiences, etc. And people who are brought back after a near-death experience, and they can describe that their consciousness still continues. So the mind is much bigger than the physical brain.
Most certainly, most certainly. And now, Judy, we're coming up. We got about 2 more minutes before the break. Tell us a little bit about where we can find the new book. The new book is called Extraterrestrial Presence on Earth. I got a picture of it for those of you watching on Facebook, and I'll show you my copy that I have. I wish I would. I should ask you to sign it for me, but might be a little bit harder now. But tell us a little bit. Where can we find the book, and where
Yes.
can we find all of your other books as well?
Yes, well, they're all on Amazon. You can get a hard copy from Amazon. You can also get the ebook copy. They're also available from Pathway Books, and on our website and on our Facebook page, we've got a connection, a link to both those places, so people can just go in and click on and order a book.
Yeah, and I just want to say for those of you that do get it, I'm reading it now. I'm very lucky I get a copy of it. And not only is there like dialogue of otherworldly beings, there's information going into the other players. We're going to talk about that after the break, of course. Other players that are involved, the Arcturians, the Pleiadians, and so much, just so much information to cover. And you've done it and written it so beautifully. I can't wait to. Well, I have about 7 hours to read the whole thing, but I'll never have that time. I keep reading like a couple pages here and there, and I'm loving it. I truly am loving it. Judy, before we go on the break, I was wondering if well, actually, I don't even want to get into a big question right now. We've only got a few more seconds. I was about to say, tell us a little bit more about the other races, but I guess we should talk about that after the break. Anyway,
look, how about I just give our website for now, Bernard?
Oh, great idea. Thank you.
Yep, our website is ufograyinfo.com, and that's Grey spelled with an E, ufograyinfo.com, and our Facebook page is the Zeta Message.
Wonderful. And you are all listening to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio and Facebook Live. We'll be right back after this break. We're going to continue our conversation with Judy Carroll. We'll be right back. Thank you. And welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at revolution.radio. As well, we are simulcasting live on my Facebook page at facebook.com/Bernard Alex Alvarez. We're continuing our conversation with Judy Carroll, but before we do that, I just want to remind everyone that Revolution Radio is the largest listener-supported radio station in the world. We have 2 studios, Studio A, Studio B, with over 70 shows continually going on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So why don't you head on over to freedomslips.com and or revolution.radio and make a contribution to support the great programming on this amazing radio network. As well, if you appreciate the work that I'm doing on the Just Bernard Show, or my YouTube channel, or the classes that I do, or my social media pages, or of the many little projects I have my fingers in. I work with a lot of people around the world, and I do most of my work volunteer. So if you could, many of us are having a difficult time with the new YouTube stuff that's going on. Head on over to patreon.com/Bernard Alvarez, and for as little as $2 a month, you can become a patron and receive access to patron-exclusive content. You get a free PDF copy of my book, as well as other classes, shows, MP3 downloads that you can download and take with you anywhere. And again, all for as little as $2 a month. You can pick a level depending on how much you want to contribute, and you can receive very special gifts made just for you, from me to you. Anyway, let's continue our talk with Judy Carroll, who's so lovingly joining us here at Live, and I'm very excited to have her back on the show. Before the break, we were discussing what other types of alien races are there, and is that the right term to use? We've heard of Arcturians, we've heard of Pleiadians, and maybe, Judy, you can help us understand how to approach the different types of alien species. How would you call it?
Well, it's actually interesting, Bernard, because many years ago we asked one of the Grey teachers, what do you want us to call you? Do you want us to call you ETs or Zetas or Greys or aliens or what? And his answer was, look, anything except aliens. They don't like that term very much because there's too much them and us. And, I mean, they're all about oneness. So, we're all family. And he said, what we'd really like you to call us is family. And I know that it's not just the Greys. All the ET races are the same. The Pleiadians, the Arcturians, the Sirians, they're all here to help out, and they all look upon Earth humans as part of the family. So, that I think that's the best thing to call them. The Pleiadians are actually much closer related to Earth humans than the Greys are, because they're a mammalian species, whereas the Greys are insectoids. And this is the reason why the Greys do have a lot of problems with communication and the fear factor and things, because they look so different. Whereas the Pleiadians look a lot more Earth human, and Earth humans actually carry a very high percentage of Pleiadian genetics in their makeup. It's quite interesting because the Australian Aboriginals here in Australia are very, how can I say, accepting and open about their star ancestry. And the Pleiadians are one of the main races that they acknowledge as being part of their star family. And this has been carried down consciously through many, 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 many generations. I actually speak about this in Extraterrestrial Presence quite a lot because my understanding, and this is the understanding of quite a few people, is that the Australian Aboriginals were actually the first human race developed on Earth. So that, the old Adam and Eve and Garden of Eden story should actually be set here in Australia.
Oh.
And funnily enough, there is a beautiful area out in Central Australia that's like a rainforest in the middle of the desert, and the name of it is the Garden of Eden, and it's a major tourist resort, so it's quite funny. But yes, they have very strong traditions and memories of their star ancestry, and of course the Wandjina beings that are part of their artwork. Only very highly initiated tribal artists are allowed to draw them, and they look so much like the Greys. For those who've seen them would have to agree. They've got the big eyes and virtually no nose and mouth, and they illustrate the energy field around them with lines coming out from the head, because the Aboriginal people are very knowledgeable in that area. So yes, there's been a lot of other star people, Syrians too. I think they're acknowledged by the Native American people, aren't they? I'm
Yes.
not real familiar with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So many of the indigenous people down here do acknowledge their star ancestry, which is lovely. People ask for names and labels of them, what planet do they come from and what do they call themselves. And this is rather difficult because the higher evolved ETs communicate telepathically, and so they don't tend to label things with physical names like people down here do. Things are known by their energy signature. And a lot of the star language that people are starting to channel down here, okay, you can't understand what is being said, but the energy signature behind it is impacting upon humanity, just as the energy signature behind the crop circles are impacting. It doesn't impact upon our conscious mind, it impacts upon our superconscious mind or our subconscious mind, and that's where the work needs to be done. So even if you can't understand, it doesn't matter. They're still having an effect on you.
Yes, and I'm so happy that you're bringing up energy and vibration, and well, the way that you're explaining it is so eloquent, and I really appreciate that because even for me, my experience with them, again, it's very interesting. At the beginning of the show, you mentioned how you thought they were divas because they are transdimensional, And the same thing happened with me when I had my contact with them. I just saw them as light beings, and I defined them as interdimensional light beings, for lack of a better term. It wasn't until years later that I realized, for lack of a better term, it came to my consciousness that these were beings from other worlds, for lack of a better term. That it was an ET communication using 3D language and symbology that we're using here today. But I really appreciate it because it is all energetic, and the energy. And for me, it was all telepathic as well. The communication. You in your book, you talk about moving forward to another interesting topic that I can relate to. Is you talk about being a blended soul. I was told that I met these five beings of light, and one of the beings of light, um, I asked them who they were. They said, "I am you. I am you in this incarnation." And I was like, "What do they mean by that? Are they incarnated in my body?" And they're like, "Yes, I am an incarnation of one of these beings." I was like, "What are they talking about?" I'm wondering, is that similar to what you mean when you say a blended soul?
It's actually a little bit different, but it could certainly overlap. What they're talking about, I mentioned the human ladder before that one of the Grey elders, Horus, taught us about, and I received more teaching on it from my elder, Maris, that it has 10 levels. And at the time when Horus was talking about it, he told us that we live 10 lives on each level. Now, this didn't make sense to us because we know we live a number of lives. I mean, we could live 100 lives or more on level one, where Earth is, and then we go to the next level. So this 10 lives on each level didn't make sense. And it wasn't until, quite recently, I've actually included it in the new book, thank goodness, I came to understand that what he was saying was that we're multidimensional beings, so we live a life on each level simultaneously. So what this can mean is that when we have, say, an ET coming to visit us, they can be part of our own soul that's living on a higher level. Does that make sense?
Yeah, actually, that makes more sense to me than the way I interpreted it.
Yeah,
That makes a lot more sense.
it's really hard to put into three-dimensional terms.
Yeah.
This is actually the true meaning behind when they talk about us being made in God's image. Man is made in the image of God. It's not that God's a physical being. That's absolute rubbish. But God is a multidimensional energy. And in actual fact, we are multidimensional energy as well. So we have multiple lives on each level of the human ladder.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't help but wonder if this is, back in, what was it, 2004, 5, 6, 7, 8, there was a big awakening or movement, for lack of a better term, called the Starseed movement, where many people were, I guess, remembering either their alien past lives or remembering that they were uh, in attunement or alignment with other race transdimensional consciousness.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, see, this is part of our consciousness expansion, part of our awakening. And this is the reason why when we get visited by an ET, often they will say, it's time for you to wake up. And what their meaning is, it's time for you to wake up to more self-realization. As it even says in the Bible, man, know thyself. And that is what that is recognizing that we have many, many aspects. We're not just the little physical being down here, we're multidimensional. And the more we manage to expand our minds through evolution, the more we can access those higher parts of ourselves, which is our whole key to evolution. And this is what's being blocked down here. People are being dumbed down. Reincarnation's been denied by so many religions to stop this process happening.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And speaking of that, you were saying that you write in the book how we have the hijacking of the original planetary plan for evolution and fallen angels. Who was hijacking? Who are the fallen angels?
It was actually a group that was developed down here by the Draconians, back going about 4 billion years ago. That's about the age of the planet. A number of creator beings came here to assist life to be seeded on planet Earth. So there's a physical evolution, but also a higher evolutionary process going on. And one of those groups was the Draconians, and they were actually quite a highly evolved creator race. And one group of them rebelled. And this is the story of Lucifer in the Bible, who used to sit on the right hand of God. This is a reference to the fact that they were a very highly evolved creator race. But part of this group rebelled, and they actually produced a human race. There's been a number of Genesis events on Earth, about 6. And one of the Genesis events was a human reptilian group of people. And these ones rebelled and joined with the Draconians, or actually they rebelled against some of the Draconians, whereas other of the Draconians joined them, and they basically took over the planet. They hijacked it, which is not what's supposed to happen. Creator races are supposed to assist the evolution on a planet, but they don't take a planet over and control it. They have to stand back and allow it to develop itself and then come in and help a little bit more. But these, I call them repterans, because the main group was actually born down here on Earth. So they are Earth humans, but they're reptoid humans. They're not mammalian humans, or they were back then. And they've actually continued to incarnate down here now as ordinary human beings, but they still have links back to this repteran controller group. And they're the ones who hijacked the planet and basically took it over. I think it was at the time of Atlantis it happened. And other ETs were driven off the planet. There were a lot of nuclear-type wars that went on back then, and there's evidence still in places like the Gobi Desert of sand that's been turned to glass through nuclear bombs and things that were let off back then. And so the proper ETs, the creator beings, left the planet, and these ones continued to evolve down here, or I should say reincarnate down here. And some have evolved and some haven't. Some are still stuck, and they want to maintain control down here, and that's what's going on now.
And is it fair to say this all goes back to where we were talking about the suppression of human consciousness? I know that your connection, or the ETs, aliens for lack of a better term, that you are working with are benevolent, but what would be the purpose of malevolent beings to suppress our consciousness?
They actually feed off human fear. So the more fear that they can generate, the stronger they become. And that's their whole agenda for staying here and being here and keeping humans enslaved. It feeds them. That's how they get their kicks.
So it's an energetic thing.
It's an energetic thing, yes. And hence,
going back to what we were saying about energy, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Everything is energy. Everything comes back to energy. The whole universe is energy. Nothing more, nothing less. It's just energy. And everything that happens has a basis in energy. And that's the whole thing that's going on down here. They talk about the Armageddon thing, but it's not a physical war between religions or anything. It's a choosing that everyone needs to make an individual choice between the energy of love and the energy of fear. And we could look upon it as being the energy of love is like the God essence within a person, or the Christ consciousness. The energy of fear is what the church has labelled as Satan. And we both have the potential. We all have the potential for both in our energy frequency makeup signature, and we have to make a free will choice between these two. So, of course, the controllers, the reptilian controllers, are putting out as much propaganda and fear as they can to keep people caught up in that. They also do a lot of dumbing down through technology, through the entertainment industry, through things like addictions to drugs and alcohol and gambling and all. They work through all these avenues to keep humanity dumbed down, trapped, and in a state of fear and disempowerment.
I couldn't agree with you more. At least just as an observer of what's going on, it seems to me that, and it's very interesting because here we are in 2018, and back in 2006, if I'm not mistaken, I remember receiving a message, and I know several other quote-unquote transdimensional contactees, channelers, whatever you want to use, whatever term you want to use, had said we're in a window right now that we have the ability to ascend to a higher level of consciousness, but that window is going to close around 2017, 2018. And for me, and I'm not one to watch corporate media. I don't watch the news. I don't watch CNN. I don't watch anything, popular culture news. I don't, because I stopped doing that years ago. It was too depressing and whatnot. However, even without watching that, even with cleaning up my Facebook page and my Facebook feed and not seeing all the bickering and the nonsense, I still feel that I don't know how to call it. It's like a weight, a burden on my spirit, and it's very frustrating as far as where we are as a culture, where we are as a planet on a conscious level, as a collective conscious level, I should say. So, and I'm feeling a lot of sadness for humanity lately. I'm feeling a lot of concern, more so than I have in the even last year. Even during the the election of Trump didn't faze me like I'm being fazed right now. There's something happening for me. I'm wondering, do the Zetas have a plan? Are they keeping an eye? What is going on with humanity, and their timeline? Is there a timeline, or are they just kind of hanging around and hoping that we wake up?
Well, the thing is a lot of people complain. They say, oh, there's all this going on down here. Why don't the ETs just come down? They could fix it. They're not allowed to do that. I was given a really, really good analogy a while back on this. It's like a football team with a coach, and humanity is the football team and the ETs are the coach, and they can give guidance before the game, but while the game's on, the coach has to sit on the sideline. If the coach got up and came out onto the field and started playing, all hell would break loose. It's just not allowed to happen. Now, it's a very, very similar thing. The ETs can help by giving advice, and channeling information through ones, not like myself and many, many others down here. But humanity, in the end, has to make the choice between love and fear themselves. The ETs can't do that for them. What they often say is the key is understanding, knowing what's going on down here, so people can make an informed choice. This is the whole problem. We're telling people to choose between love and fear, but people don't understand. They need have understanding to be able to make the informed choice between love and fear, and that's why this book has been written, and other books are out there to give people that understanding. Understanding is empowerment. And that's the key to the whole thing.
You brought something to mind, talking about the choice. And of course, I do believe we are responsible for our thoughts. I believe we are responsible for our path and our choices on an individual level as well as a collective society. My question is, well, I don't even know who the question is directed to, if it's to you, the ATs, or myself, but I ponder, if we're being tricked. Like I said, this has been a suppression of consciousness that has been going on for so long. Can we take responsibility for something like that? And how do we shake out of it? Is there, for me, I feel like I had a literally, not to sound too much like a hippy-dippy, a cosmic awakening. Something went into me, some download, energetic, awakening happened and kind of shook me. And all of a sudden, I saw through the veil, I saw through the nonsense, I saw through the illusion, for lack of a better term. And this was years after my experience with them, years after my shamanic vision quest, where I was just literally sitting down at a desk and just felt this amazing energy move through me. So I feel like I had a little bit of a supernatural, B12 shot, for lack of a better term. Where does that leave us as a society that is constantly being bombarded with propaganda and low vibrational media and beliefs being thrust upon us? What are your thoughts on what maybe they've shared at something?
Well, it is difficult because it really is an individual thing. See, you're obviously open to it, as I was, and as are many others, but at the same time, there are a huge number of people down here who are very caught up in whatever their belief system or their day-to-day lives. And the thing is, what we have to remember is reincarnation is a fact. So if people don't, make the leap in this life, they may do it in the next life. So the main thing that the ETs are trying to do is lay the groundwork for it now. And then over the next few lives, hopefully, or generations of reincarnation, hopefully things will start to improve. It might, really, at the moment, when you think about it, things are starting to improve.
Oh, yeah,
People are starting to wake up. You've only got to look at what's happened with that Hollywood film producer, Harvey Weinstein, the way all that's happening with him, the paedophilia in the churches is being brought out in the open. Our four big banks here have been exposed with some sort of illegal goings on. Paul Hellyer, the ex-Defence Minister of Canada, has come out talking about the world banking system in his book Light at the End of the Tunnel. You've even got to look at the British royal family to see massive changes within their structure. So things are happening. I know we get bombarded with all the negative stuff, but at the same time, there are positive changes happening. And I think if people can just tune into that more.
And actually, that's kind of the answer. For me, that works, and it's true. It's what are we giving our attention to, and
Exactly.
I guess we constantly have to remind ourselves that, I always say how Earth is going through a rebirth, and we're going through that birth canal, and it's uncomfortable, it's painful.
It's labour
There's
pains.
yeah,
Exactly.
it's the labor pains,
Yeah.
all the
Labour
ugliness, but at
pains.
the same time. Maybe perhaps because I'm an empath, I'm feeling everybody else's sadness or frustration, but and I'm very prone to doing that, which I need to be more aware of. But yeah, to be aware that we are just going through a process of change.
Yeah.
And
A couple more things regarding that, you being an empath. What the other thing that the ETs have taught us very, very much, in fact, they've given me a whole Reiki seminar to teach about it, is compassionate non-attachment. Um, we understand where people are, but we've got to guard our own energy and not get too caught up because, again, people are all where they're meant to be. There are no accidents. One of the Grey elders always says that whenever Helena or I or any of the people we know come out, oh, this is happening, that's happening, he always comes out and he says there are no accidents. You've got to look at the bigger picture. So, yeah, practicing compassionate non-attachment is important.
and thank you for that reminder. I try, but then sometimes it
I
turns
know.
into aggravated compassion.
Oh, Bernard, we're only human.
So I think I'm like, am I getting cranky in my old age, or
I think the same thing. And the other thing that people need to remember, and this is really, really important because the controllers are pulling out all the stops here at the moment, quantum physics is beginning to prove we create our own reality. So if you can get a negative group like that, controlling people's minds through fear-oriented belief systems or whatever, you've got them at their core. So what people have to do, they have to learn to tap into positive, creation rather than negative, because it's our thinking patterns. The whole teaching came through from Maris, my Grey elder, on that years ago, about how easy it is to fall into negative thought patterns. It's like a jellyfish washed to and fro by the tide, whereas
oh yeah.
positive thinking is a lot harder, takes a lot of willpower and strength.
It certainly does, and I agree that meditation is a big part for me. Meditation and that type of work, again, whether it's Tai Chi or yoga or meditation, doing some type of work to ground ourselves and to change that. I always talk about the broken record in our mind. Change that broken record. I don't want to say take control of our thoughts, but learn to guide our thoughts instead of letting our thoughts guide us and control us. With that being said, we're running out of time, Judy. We've only got a couple more minutes. Can you tell us again, remind us about the book? Let me just show it here for those of you watching live. It's Extraterrestrial Presence on Earth, Lessons in History. where can people get it? And can you remind us of your website again, please?
Yes, people can get it in hard copy off Amazon or also as an ebook through Kindle, and they can also get it through Pathway Books, and both can be accessed through our website, ufograyinfo.com. That's grey spelled with an E, ufograyinfo.com, and also through our main Facebook page, the Zeta Message, and I also have my own Facebook page, Judy Carroll.
Very good. And with that said, I always like to leave the show on an inspirational note. So, if you knew that the entire world was listening, or the ETs knew the entire world was listening, what would be a short message that you would want every single human being on the world to hear?
Okay, they gave me this in three parts. The concept of oneness, help people to understand that. We're all one, Earth, humans, Zetas, Pleiadians, Sirians, etc. We all share the same stream of consciousness, universal life force energy. There is no them and us in the greater reality. We're all one. We create our own reality through our thoughts, so therefore learn to think positive rather than negative. And also, we're all immortal souls and an intrinsic part of God's source or oneness. We're not just a physical body of flesh and blood. Physical body is just a vehicle or a container for the spirit and soul through which it can experience physicality. So acknowledging this consciously enables us to tap into our own power within, our own God center. This in turn enables us to break through the limiting barriers of fear to reach a state of pure unconditional love.
Beautiful. Perfect way to end the show. Thank you so much for joining us today, Judy Carroll. Everyone go check out her book and make sure to check out her website. Thank you for watching today. Next week, next Just Bernard show, we are going to have one of the icons from integrative medicine, Dr. Elson Haas, is going to be joining us live. And thank you for listening. This is the Just Bernard Show on Revolution Radio and on Facebook.com. Make sure to like us, share us, become a patron. I love you. Have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.